This wasn't a rumor, this wasn't a joke, and this definitely wasn't supposed to go public. Jay-Z, the man who never had to explain himself, is suddenly under a spotlight he can't escape. Legal letters, online investigators, and a 50-cent documentary that insiders say could crack open 2 decades of silence. The internet feels it, the industry feels it, and according to people watching closely, Jay-Z feels it too. For years, everyone repeated the same story. Jay-Z and Diddy, different worlds, different circles, different lanes. That story just imploded. What looked like distance is now being framed as cover. What looked like silence is now being called strategy. And what people once dismissed as conspiracy is now being replayed frame by frame across the internet. Because something shifted. The vibe changed, the narrative cracked, and suddenly the man who built an empire on control doesn't control the conversation anymore. People aren't asking if something happened, they're asking what happened, and why it took this long to surface. The timeline doesn't add up, the denials don't land, and the more lawyers get involved, the louder the questions get. This isn't gossip anymore. This is a full-scale investigation by the public, by the fans, by people who refuse to look away. And once that starts, there's no PR team strong enough to stop it. Here's where things get dangerous. 50 Cent wasn't just talking, he was preparing. Months of work, a documentary in motion, interviews lined up, footage compiled, witnesses ready. And then suddenly, Jay-Z's legal team sends a letter. 50's reaction? One word: fear. He posted it publicly. No filter, no hesitation. They're scared. Because powerful people don't threaten lawsuits unless something terrifying is about to surface. Think about it. Jay-Z didn't respond to rumors before. He didn't respond to conspiracy theories. He didn't respond to internet chatter. But this got lawyers moving. Fast. And according to 50, this isn't random. He says he kept his distance from Diddy years ago. Uncomfortable invitations, bad energy, situations that didn't sit right, pool parties that felt off, events where the vibe wasn't what it seemed, moments where instinct said, stay away. So when the allegations exploded around Diddy, when the lawsuits started piling up, when the accusations turned from whispers to court documents, 50 says none of it surprised him. He'd been saying it for years, but people thought he was just trolling, just stirring drama for attention. Now, they're going back through every post, every joke, every cryptic caption, and folks online are saying the same thing. He was warning us. But here's what makes this even crazier. The documentary isn't just about Diddy. It's about the culture, the industry, the power structure that protected certain people for decades. And Jay-Z's name? It's in there. Not as a side mention, not as a casual reference, as a key player in a story people have been too afraid to tell. 50 Cent says he has footage, he has interviews, he has people on record willing to speak. People who were there, people who saw things they stayed quiet because they didn't think anyone would believe them. Until now. Because the climate changed. What was once dismissed as industry business is now being called what it actually is: abuse of power. And 50 says his documentary will show the connections, the patterns, the repeated behavior, the way certain people moved in sync while pretending they barely knew each other. Online detectives went into overdrive. They started pulling clips, award show moments, behind-the-scenes footage, red carpet interactions, frame by frame, second by second. They studied body language, the way Jay-Z and Diddy stood near each other, the way they spoke, the way they looked at each other. And people online swear it's not casual. It's familiar. Too familiar. One viral thread broke it down. These two were close. Anyone saying otherwise is lying or protecting something. Then someone found the guest lists. White parties, private yachts, exclusive events where the same names showed up over and over and over again. Jay-Z's name? Right there. For years. But his team says they barely knew each other. The internet didn't buy it, because the footage tells a different story. A much different story. And that's when the tone shifted. From curiosity to suspicion. from questions to accusations. And once that line is crossed, there's no going back. Because now, it's not just 50 Cent talking. It's journalists, it's podcasters, it's social media investigators with thousands of followers dissecting every detail. It's a movement. And movements don't stop because a lawyer sends a letter. They grow. Then Jaguar Wright poured gasoline on the fire. She didn't hint, she didn't dance around it, she went straight for the throat. In a series of interviews that went viral, she said something that made the entire industry freeze. Jay-Z is worse than Diddy. Worse. Let that sit for a second. Not equal, not similar. Worse. She claimed she witnessed violence, abuse, behavior that was hidden behind power, money, and fear. And she didn't stop there. She said she was a victim, that she has scars, physical scars, from trauma she says the industry helped bury. Scars that tell a story no NDA can silence. Jay-Z's team denied everything, immediately, forcefully. But critics started asking, if it's all lies, why the panic? Why the immediate legal response? Why not just ignore it like every other conspiracy theory? Because this wasn't conspiracy. This was a named accusation from someone who worked in the industry, who knew these people, who was there. And once Jaguar spoke, others started whispering. Not publicly, not on record, but in private conversations, in group chats, in closed circles. People who'd been in the industry for decades started saying the same thing. We always knew. But knowing and saying are two very different things, especially when the person you're talking about has the resources to destroy your career, your reputation, your life. So people stayed quiet for years. But now the dam is cracking, and every new accusation makes it harder to hold back the flood. Let's talk about the timeline, because this is where things get even more suspicious. For years, Jay-Z and Diddy were seen together. Parties, business deals, public appearances. Then, suddenly, radio silence. No photos, no mentions, no collaborations. Critics say Jay-Z distanced himself right before the allegations against Diddy started gaining traction. Was it intuition, or was it strategy? Did he sense the heat coming and decide to step back before the fire reached him? Because the timing is too perfect. The moment Diddy's legal trouble intensified, Jay-Z became a ghost in that narrative. His team started pushing the "we barely knew each other" line. But the internet has receipts. Decades of them. Photos from the 90s, videos from the 2000s, interviews where they praised each other, business partnerships, shared circles. You don't just erase that, and people aren't letting him. One viral post said it best, you can rewrite the PR, but you can't rewrite the evidence. Now let's talk motive. Why would Jay-Z be involved in anything like this? Power, control, access. When you're at the top of an industry, you don't just have influence, you have protection. Protection from consequences, protection from exposure, protection from the truth. And for decades, that protection worked. But the internet changed the game. Because now truth doesn't need a press release. It needs a thread, a video, a voice. And once it's out there, it spreads faster than any legal team can suppress it. So what happens when the man who controlled everything suddenly can't control the story? Panic. And according to people watching closely, that's exactly what's happening. Behind closed doors, sources say Jay-Z's team is in crisis mode. Meetings with lawyers, meetings with PR, meetings with people who know how to make problems disappear. But this problem is not disappearing, it's growing. Because every denial sounds like deflection, every legal letter sounds like desperation, every silence sounds like guilt. And the public is reading between the lines. They're not waiting for a confession, they're watching the behavior, and the behavior is telling a story the lawyers can't rewrite. Dame Dash, Jay-Z's former business partner, said something chilling in a recent interview. This is the first time he's not in control. First time in decades. And if you know anything about Jay-Z's career, you know control is everything. He controls the narrative, he controls the image, he controls the legacy. But now,
The narrative is writing itself, and he's on the wrong side of it. But here's the part that really hits different. This isn't just moguls versus moguls. This isn't just billionaires protecting their brands. Because the people caught in the middle, they weren't billionaires. They were women, young girls, people without protection, people without power, people whose voices were silenced because no one thought they'd be believed. One accuser recently came forward in legal filings. Her story was detailed, specific, traumatic, and then she dropped her case, not because her story changed, not because she was lying, but because, she claims, fear took over. She alleges investigators found her, approached her family, pressured her into silence. And that's when people started asking the uncomfortable question. If there's nothing to hide, why all the pressure? Why the surveillance? Why the intimidation? Why does telling the truth require this much courage? Because it does. Speaking out against powerful people doesn't just take bravery, it takes risk. Risk to your safety, your reputation, your life. And for years, that risk was too high. So people stayed quiet. But now, every person who speaks now makes it easier for the next person, and the next, and the next, until silence is no longer the safest option. This accuser, whose name is being protected, said something haunting in her initial filing. "I thought someone would care. I thought someone would listen." But no one did. Not the industry, not the media, not the people who could have done something. Because protecting the powerful was easier than protecting the vulnerable. And that's the real story here. Not just what happened, but what was allowed to happen. For years, while everyone looked the other way, because it was easier, because it was profitable, because speaking up meant becoming the target, and nobody wanted to be the target. Until now. Because the culture is shifting. What used to be dismissed as industry business is now being called abuse. What used to be excused as just how things are is now being called accountability. And people aren't accepting silence anymore. They're demanding answers. They're demanding justice. They're demanding that the people who were hurt, the people who were used, finally get heard. And that's terrifying for anyone who benefited from the silence. Because once the victims start speaking, the empire starts crumbling, and there's no amount of money that can rebuild it.
The internet went full detective mode. We're talking CSI-level analysis. Old clips resurfaced, award shows re-examined, white party guest lists analyzed, body language dissected. Every frame, every gesture, every word. And what they found? It painted a picture Jay-Z's legal team did not want public. One viral clip froze people in place. It was from an awards show years ago. Diddy on stage, mid-speech. He calls Jay-Z up, and the way he touches him, the way he speaks to him, the way he uses a nickname he claims no one else could use. It didn't look professional. It didn't look casual. It looked intimate. Former insiders said it didn't just look close, it looked like family. The kind of closeness you can't fake, the kind that comes from shared experiences, shared secrets. So when Jay-Z's lawyer claimed they barely knew each other, the internet exploded because the footage tells a very different story. People started making side-by-side comparisons. Lawyer's statement, Mr. Carter and Mr. Combs were not close. Footage, laughing together, arms around each other, private conversations, exclusive events. The disconnect was glaring, and it made people ask, why lie about something so easily disproven? What's the reason for the distance now when the evidence shows closeness then? Then someone found the parties. Not just any parties, the legendary ones. Diddy's white parties were infamous. Invite-only, A-list celebrities, rumored to go until sunrise and beyond. And guess who was on the guest list? Year after year after year? Jay-Z. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. People started connecting dots. If Jay-Z was at these parties, and these parties are now being investigated, and multiple accusers have named these parties specifically, then what did Jay-Z see? What did he know? And if he knew, why didn't he say anything? One viral Twitter thread laid it out. You don't go to the same parties for 20 years and claim you don't know what's happening. You either participated or you protected. Either way, it's not a good look. Then the body language experts jumped in. Videos were analyzed. The way Jay-Z and Diddy stood near each other, the way they made eye contact, the micro expressions. One analyst said, "This is the body language of two people who share secrets, not business acquaintances." People online started calling it the look, that specific glance, that subtle nod, the kind of nonverbal communication that says, "We both know what this is." And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But it gets even crazier. Someone dug up old interviews, moments where Jay-Z was asked about Diddy, and his responses? They're being replayed now with totally different context. In one interview, he was asked, "How well do you know Diddy?" His response? "We've crossed paths. Industry stuff." Industry stuff. That's it. But people online found at least 15 major events where they were photographed together. Birthdays, album releases, private dinners, yacht trips. That's not crossing paths. That's a relationship. So why downplay it? Why the revisionist history? Because the truth is inconvenient. And in this moment, inconvenient truths are dangerous. Then the financial connections started surfacing. Business deals that linked Jay-Z and Diddy, shared investments, mutual partnerships, overlapping ventures. One investigator found records showing they were both involved in the same real estate deal, the same entertainment fund, the same private equity group. These aren't coincidences. These are ties, deep ones. And ties mean accountability. If Diddy's empire is crumbling because of what he did, then everyone tied to that empire is under scrutiny, including Jay-Z. Because the question isn't just what did you do, it's what did you know and when did you know it? And silence? Silence looks like complicity. One comment summed it up perfectly. You can't be in the room and pretend you didn't see what was on the table. Jay-Z was in the room for years, and now people want to know what was on the table. Then the ghosts came back. Stories people thought were buried years ago, suddenly resurfacing. The long-whispered death of Kathy White. For those who don't know, Kathy White was a woman allegedly linked to Jay-Z. She died suddenly, unexpectedly, and the circumstances never fully explained. For years, it was treated as conspiracy theory, dismissed, mocked, forgotten. But now, people are digging it back up. Reddit threads, YouTube deep dives, TikTok investigators breaking down timelines. And the questions are getting louder. What really happened? Who benefits from the silence? And why is asking about it feel dangerous? Then there's the royalty questions. Artists who worked with Jay-Z early in his career, claiming they never saw fair payment. Contracts that locked them in, deals that favored the label, careers that got buried when they spoke out. This isn't new, but in this climate, it hits different because it's part of a pattern: control, power, silencing anyone who threatens the empire. And people are connecting those dots now. They're saying this isn't just about one accusation, it's about a system that protected certain people, a system that punished anyone who questioned them. Then Nicki Minaj entered the chat. She posted something cryptic, just a repost, no caption. But the content? It was about Diddy, about allegations, about industry secrets. And within hours, reports say Jay-Z's legal team made moves, fast moves. Why? Why would a repost trigger that kind of response? Unless it hits something buried, something they desperately didn't want amplified. People online started asking, what does Nicki know? Because she's been in the industry long enough. She's been close to these circles. And if she's willing to repost it, maybe she's ready to say something. And that's a threat. Because Nicki has a platform. She has millions of followers. And if she starts talking, the floodgates open. Meanwhile, Dame Dash keeps dropping breadcrumbs. He's not outright saying anything, but he's implying. Talking about how Jay-Z moves different now, how he's worried about image, how the truth always comes out. And people are listening because Dame was there. He built Rockefeller with Jay-Z. He knows the history, the deals, the secrets. And if he ever decides to talk fully, it's over. This isn't just about Jay-Z anymore. It's about how power survives. For decades, the playbook was the same. NDAs, legal threats, money replacing truth, fear replacing accountability, and it worked. Victims stayed silent, witnesses stayed quiet. The machine kept running. But something shifted. The internet gave people a voice, social media gave them a platform, and suddenly, silence became harder to enforce. Because you can't NDA the entire internet. You can't sue every person who asks questions. You can't intimidate a movement. And that's what this has become, a movement. People aren't just talking about Jay-Z, they're talking about everyone. Every powerful person who used their position to harm others. Every executive who looked the other way. Every lawyer who drafted the paperwork to bury the truth. This is bigger than one documentary, bigger than one accusation. This is a reckoning. And reckonings don't stop at one name. They spread. Because once people realize the system was designed to protect abusers, they stop trusting the system. They start asking, who else? What else? How deep does this go? And those questions, they're the ones that tear down empires. For years, people said, that's just how the industry works. But now people are saying, that's not good enough. The culture is changing. Silence used to be survival. Now, silence looks like guilt. And in this new era, guilt doesn't get protected. It gets exposed. The bigger question now isn't whether Jay-Z will survive this. It's whether the industry will. Because if the biggest names can fall, if the untouchables can be touched, then nothing is sacred. And that's terrifying for everyone who thought they were safe. Dame Dash said it best. This is the first time Jay-Z isn't controlling the narrative. First time, ever. And insiders swear this is only the beginning. More witnesses preparing to speak, more footage rumored to exist, and a documentary closer to release than anyone expected. Some believe federal pressure around Diddy could pull in names nobody thought would ever be questioned. Others say the damage is already done, because once the image cracks, you never look untouchable again. Jay-Z built an empire on control. Control of the music, control of the business, control of the story. But you can't control the truth forever. Eventually, it finds a way out. And when it does, everything built on lies collapses. Some say we're watching the first domino fall in something much bigger. Others say this is the reckoning. Either way, the man who never had to explain himself might finally have to answer, and the world is watching. So now the real question isn't, is Jay-Z guilty? It's, can the myth survive? Is silence strategy or admission? Does 50 Cent really have the receipts? And are we watching the first domino fall in something much bigger? Drop your take in the comments. Like if this breakdown changed your perspective. Subscribe and turn on notifications because when the next bombshell drops, you'll want to see it first. Power protects power until the internet starts asking questions. And right now, those questions are getting loud.